Welcome back to LP's Open Mic Night, where I sit here and talk about the Cowboys. No script, nothing rewritten, just going right at it. So we're here. Finally back. Cowboys open training camp today with their first practice and a lot to kind of break down and digest and discuss. So I'll get right to it tonight. But before we start with today's practice, I want to go back one step. I also want to remind you guys, if you like this video, like this content style that I'm doing, just freestyling it pretty much, hit that like, hit that sub button to grow the channel. It does a lot for me to hopefully build that so more people can see the video and more eyes on these projects. So yesterday, the Cowboys sat down and had their opening press conference, a yearly thing they do every season of sitting down in front of the cameras and in front of the media and talking about their pseudo manifesto for the season and what they plan to do and what they plan to accomplish of sorts with Jerry, Steven, Mike McCarthy. And so a lot of things were said. I didn't hear it live. I went back and I watched it afterwards on YouTube, kind of listening to all their bullet points, what they wanted to talk about. So before I talk about the practice today, what that means, I want to talk about that press conference and what they said, because they said a whole lot. They said a mouthful about what they mean about this team, last year's team, and where we stand right now. So the first thing that I want to say is with that practice, the first thing they gave was a vote of confidence to Mike McCarthy and how steadfast they are in supporting Mike McCarthy. Now, do I think that's sincere? Who's to say? There's been a lot of rumors about the job security, a lot of rumors about how they feel about Dan Quinn, maybe Sean Payton off the street. So there's a lot going on with as it pertains to Mike McCarthy. And Jerry did say that he's got 2 more years left on his contract, but he would not discuss and we would not iterate of a vote of confidence means giving him an extension. And Jerry was very adamant about not committing to either, which I don't fault him for. I wouldn't commit to Mike McCarthy beyond what he's down for right now anyway. So is there a little bit of maybe a hot seat under McCarthy? I would say so. Because they expected a lot more. They thought last year, in his words, that last year might have been the year to move forward, and that would have been the year to punch their ticket and make that big game as well. But that remains to be seen. For me, I'm kind of a wait and see type of thing where McCarthy must do something tangible in the playoffs with this team to keep his job in lock and step. And then Jerry absolutely came and blew a hole in Amari Cooper and Lyle Collins. He was very pointed with his words, talking about those guys that are not here anymore. And he talked about the money they made last year and how much money they were making, how you pay them and expect them to be leaders of the team. So I'll start with Amari. When it comes to Amari Cooper, even before he got to Dallas, a lot was said about Cooper with the Raiders and if he was a good leader or not, if football was his number one priority. And to be honest, the things that were said about him with the Raiders held true here. You know, Cooper on his own merit is a great route runner, a good talent, but when he's not focused on football and playing the game to his full ability, you can tell. You know, I saw it for myself firsthand. And if you want to go back to my film breakdown on Amari Cooper, it told you a lot about him and him wanting to play and not wanting to play. And that's a definite no-no when it comes to the Cowboys. You know, you have to be that guy. If you're the number one player, the number one option, you have to be that guy and give it all you got. And that's a trait that he doesn't share with the prior number one receivers in Dallas. He doesn't share that trait of being the number one guy, doing whatever it takes to win, like a Des Bryant, like a Terrell Owens, like a Michael Irvin. That's not who Amari Cooper was. And as the owner had said, for the money that he was making, the money he was getting paid, he wasn't all about it. Same can be said about Lyle Collins too. And Lyle, in his case, it was about not being present for what it took to be a football player with the Cowboys, not being available, not doing what he had to do to be ready to be that guy on the team. So whether it was him allegedly skipping out on drug tests and getting suspended, whether it was him coming to camp not fit, not in shape, and then getting hurt, a lot of the things that he was supposed to do, as they said, to be prepared to play and take on the responsibility of being a Cowboy, him and Amari weren't doing. And Jerry made it clear that it wasn't really the money, because with the money, they could have made the money work. They're not gone or, you know, removed from the team based on the money, because they could have made their contracts work. It's that those two players weren't about all it takes to win. And with a guy like Dak Prescott, that doesn't exactly mesh well or fit in well. Those two players aren't all about winning. Therefore, they're not here anymore. And for that point, I agree with the front office. And I think they're right to move on from them. Then, but the one thing that was said also was about the draft picks and moving on from players like that, where they're their mindset is almost a addition by subtraction, by subtracting those guys from the team and moving on to these new draft picks. Stephen Jones wanted to liken the new draft picks, the new blood, like Tyler Smith, Tyler Waletzko. He had likened them to Tyron Smith and Zach Martin, of just throwing them in there and having them play, see what they've got. I think that's a bit presumptuous because those players aren't necessarily the type of blue chip talent that those two guys are, Zach Martin and Tyron Smith, to jump right in and play in a moment's pinch. But I found it interesting that he mentioned Waletzko by, in name and by choice. He mentioned him as if maybe he knows that a swing tackle is important. Maybe he's not sure about Tyron Smith and his health this season. So I found that kind of interesting to mention him and going out of his way to mention, a mid-round offensive tackle as a guy who he thinks might be a plug and play given a circumstance. So I thought that was an interesting bullet point. And then just talking about the team itself and talking about their cap space and saying that the cap space is dry powder. The Cowboys have this thing, Steven has this thing, and he's proud about it. He's actually very proud of not spending a lot of money and being very secure in building a team through the draft and, but not spending a lot of resources on free agents and players. He's very proud of it, saying that the cap space he has is dry powder for next year. Well, that dry powder isn't Kool-Aid, and the fans aren't really buying it either. Like the fans have turned, and their skepticism is at an all-time high. The fans are actually very cynical right now, and they should be. They're very cynical about what this team does to win because in one vein, Jerry will say he'll do whatever it takes to win. In the other vein, the son of the owner doesn't want to spend money. But then look at quotes like today, he'll liken what the Rams are doing to be successful. And he almost tries to downplay as if it doesn't matter. Well, it matters. It matters. So them not trying to spend money, them being content on what they're doing. I understand trying to improve and trying to build the culture of the team by removing players who don't want to compete and who don't want to be all about the game and winning football games. But at the same time, to have the approach that we like our guys, or we're okay with what we have right now, that approach is what bothers a lot of fans. And that approach is what gets under fans' skin. And it's not about signing a bunch of players or signing a lot of guys for big time money. It's about filling out your roster with depth, with a contingency plan if things don't work out. Let's take a look at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay didn't need to sign Julio Jones, but they signed him for $6 million as a backup plan if things go wrong. And that's the difference between the Cowboys and Stephen Jones, how they think. They're very loose with having their roster set in case things happen. And that's a problem. In my eyes, that's a problem. Not having your team supported if something were to go wrong is a major problem. And it tells you that they're not all about winning every game possible, because in the NFL, every single game matters. Every week matters. When it comes to seeding, when it comes to winning a game, getting the number one seed, a bye, every game counts. And so the Cowboys kind of with the wait and see approach, which I don't agree with it as far as having this dry powder, as they say, for cap space. It doesn't make much sense. So part of that I'm not going to agree with. And of course, with them mentioning that, I want to segue into Zeke Elliott. They talked about having a strong vote of confidence in Ezekiel Elliott. So they talked about the players who aren't here anymore, not wanting to do all it took to win, but they mentioned Ezekiel Elliott. And I agree with them to that extent, but that's a gift and a curse because Ezekiel Elliott will do whatever it takes to win. That's not a question. But it's also protecting Ezekiel Elliott so that he doesn't have to play on a bad knee and play to where he's not his true self. So that tells you all you need to know about Ezekiel Elliott. And if you were a fan that was concerned or had questions or believed that Zeke is a one and done after this season, I don't think so. This team has dug their heels into Ezekiel Elliott and what he is as a player and giving it all that he has, that no matter how much he may be hampered by injury or if he's slowing down, he's going to see the field. And as it's been stated before with the Cowboys, the money will see the field no matter what happens. And Zeke's been paid handsomely, so he will see that field. So that's one thing. And then to kind of wrap it up with their press conference, he was asked, I think Jerry was asked a point blank question, which was, how do you feel about the lack of success with this team in the last 30 years? Really, to be straightforward, is how do you feel about the lack of not making the NFC title game in the last 30 years? And Jerry tried to, I guess, mitigate the effect or the sting of that question of not making a title game in the last 30 years. And he tried to say, well, they were close. There were some what ifs with the Dez catch or the Dez no catch in Green Bay. At the end of the day, these two owners, Jerry and Son, they understand that the fans have had their fill. The fans are tired of not making a title game. You're a Cowboys fan. You see that graphic every single season of only 3 teams that have not made the NFC title game since 1995. And those 3 teams are Washington, Detroit, and Dallas. The only 3 NFC teams to not make a title game since 1995. So Jerry's aware of it. Steven is aware of it. But Jerry had a way of trying to sweep it under the carpet and sell more hope to the fan base. The fans are over it. I'm over it myself. There has to be more tangible success in going forward beyond that. And again, it all ties back to, do you really believe what you say as far as being content with the results? And also, do you really believe that you're trying to do all that you can to build a winner? I don't see it. But he did say that he has more confidence in this team than last year, or he feels that this team is better prepared to succeed over last year. To that point, starting early, I don't think so, but we'll talk about that as I talk about the practices. So let's move forward to today's practice. So the first thing I want to say when it comes to practices and training camps as a whole, don't overreact. Do not overreact to what you see day one or even throughout training camp practices, because you take it with a grain of salt. A lot of these things that you see don't translate to the games in preseason into the regular season. So after one day, don't overreact to a throw by Dak Prescott or a pick 6 by Anthony Brown, who, by the way, Anthony Brown is a lot better than fans believe that he is and had a much better season than some think that he did. But don't overreact. It's still early. It's the first day. They're getting acclimated. They're back. You saw a Dak Prescott throw that, you think might have been a bad ball placement on a slant to CeeDee Lamb. For all we know, that could have been intentional and installed day one. So I say for that, don't overreact. But as far as today, though, that I have seen the highlights where that was stated, Sam Williams was playing really well. Jalen Tolbert was really well. Had a nice day at camp today, nice day at practice. So the team really is digging their heels deep into these young players, these young core of players that they're going to lean on heavily. In the case of Jalen Tolbert was that one guy that, even looking at him myself, kind of going back and reading what people were saying about him and kind of looking at him a little bit more, is the one thing about him is he seems to be mature, that he gets it. He's an older rookie who's 23 years old. So his body's a bit more mature for playing the NFL game right now. His mentals are probably more mature than the average person coming into the league at 20, 21 years old, who understand how to play the position and how to handle himself. So that's one player you should feel good about, because he's probably able to handle himself and knowing what it takes to be a pro. Plus the rapport he already has with Dak Prescott, being that Dak called him before the draft to kind of get acclimated with him. It helps a lot. It will serve him better. So he's a guy that you want to look out for in these practices, these games. Again, don't overreact to the practices, but I believe when the games come around, the live action comes around, he'll show you some things, make you feel confident that he may be your number 2 receiver going into week 1. So good, a good building blocks. We'll see how that translates to the game and, hopefully to week 1. And then Sam Williams, they talked about him being really productive today, having a nice look, working alongside with Dan Quinn, who was taking a hand-on approach with the edge rushers today. So that's a good sign for Sam Williams to show something early in camp. But I will say, though, if that guy, Williams, builds on that process and he continues to look like that, it makes you ask what happens now to these vets on the roster, because the Cowboys have a lot of numbers on the D-line. I think the D-line, even though you lost Randy Gregory in the offseason, that may become another part of strength, because you have guys like Sam Williams, you have guys like Dorrance Armstrong coming back, you have somebody like Terrell Basham, Dante Fowler. But if we know anything about the Cowboys, if a draft pick is performing to a high standard and a high level, and the draft pick is outdoing the veteran, then the veteran needs to watch out. So we'll see what happens with Sam Williams as we get further and further into camp and these games. But if Sam can outdo somebody like Basham or Fowler, who knows? One of them may be the odd man out. So we'll find out. We'll find out what happens. And of course, today is the 27th of July. In about 2 weeks, they'll have their first game. So it's kind of all come full circle from a tough way to lose in the playoffs at home to the Niners to finally making that long walk back, that long journey back to playing live actual football. It's only about 2 weeks away. So it's here, it's coming, it's ready to be excited for Cowboys football. So we'll see. And, this is my early thoughts on the press conference, the first day of practice, and we'll see how we go along. Just my unscripted thoughts on the Cowboys. But that's pretty much it for this video tonight. If you guys like the video, hit the sub button, hit the like button, share. As always, I'll be back hopefully sometime in the week talking more Cowboys, talking more practices. But as always, Cowboys up. Peace.